Were Rich Rodriguez and his coaching staff desperate just to fill a roster this year and had to kind of go out and just grab guys out of the portal without really having time to evaluate them? And even though that sounds like a negative, I actually think it's a positive, and I'm going to put a positive spin on it, and we're going to do it right now. What is up? Welcome into this episode of Couz's Corner, your home for top shelf college sports news and analysis surrounding the West Virginia Mountaineers and the Big 12. If you like an objective analysis from a fan's point of view, I'm your guy. Thank you for joining the show. What we're talking about today is basically kind of going over Rich Rod's radio show last night and some of the things he had to say. And I actually came away from it feeling better about the future of the program. And I used the word desperation in the opener. I think they were kind of desperate. He didn't use that word. It's not Rich Rod's word. It's my word. It's how I interpreted his comments. And I think Rich Rod was very candid in that interview with Tony Caridi last night and also answering some fan questions. But we're going to go over a little bit of just what he had to say about that, about injuries and other things. But let's start off talking about just, he talked about the growing pains this year are more than anybody thought they would be. But he's more aware now of what they have to do to get better. He talked about how he did not have time to evaluate the team. He watched bowl practices, he watched the bowl game, but most of those guys aren't on the roster anymore. He got to watch, obviously, he got to watch film of the guys, but until you see guys in action, it's hard to evaluate them. So now he has a better feel. He and his staff have a better feel for what players or what type of players they need in this conference. Let's keep in mind, this is Rich Rod's first time coaching in the Big 12. So he may not have had a really good feel for what type of bodies, what type of physicality, what type of speed or any of that he needed. Because again, yes, he can watch game tape. Yes, he can watch game film, but it's not the same. And yes, he used to coach in the Pac-12 and it should be similar, but that's been what, 8 years ago or something like that, maybe even more, that he left that conference. So things could have changed some, and it's a different league. It's a different league than the Pac. I'm not saying it's better, worse, whatever. It's just different. You probably need a different type of player to compete with the teams in his conference. He now knows what he needs, and he knows what positions they are weak at and where they need more depth. So they've had more time to do that. And, he talked about how the team was, harkening back to the UCF game. He was talking about how disappointed it was to see that they were not locked in as focused as he thought they were. He harkened back to the Pitt game and how the team was seemed more locked in. He said going into this game, the team was a lot more loud and talkative in the locker room and things before the game. He thought they were just ready to play, but he said looking back at it, they probably weren't focused. And he actually took ownership of and put the ownership of that on himself and the staff for not getting them ready. And he said he did not read the room well, and he put that on himself. I respect the fact that Rich Rod puts a lot of this on himself and doesn't always lay the blame on the players. I respect that. He talked about how there were a few guys in that game who were soft and lazy, or at least had moments of being soft and lazy. And he said they've got to fix that because that is not acceptable in the program. We've heard him talk about that multiple times. They're in a point in the season now where everybody, including staff, is getting evaluated each and every day. They talked about the O-line. He did talk about how assignment-wise, it hasn't been that bad, but physically they've been getting outplayed. They've been getting no push in the run game, and he said they're not engaging or not absorbing enough in the pass game to protect the quarterback. So that has to get better. He talked about Donovan Haslam and Malik Agbo. Both of those guys, he said, will get more snaps this week. I doubt they'll start because, we've seen him run the same five guys out there. I've talked about that on this channel multiple times. He keeps running the same five guys out there. I get it. I guess they're the best option right now. But he said Haslam and Agbo will get more snaps, and that's important because both of those guys could be back next year. He talked about how they don't have an identity. They want to be obviously a run team who runs, especially even with the quarterback. They haven't been able to establish that yet because of their struggles, not only up front, but in other areas as well, and also due to injury, which we'll talk about in a minute. He talked about how they didn't have time to recruit high school players. You know, uh, this is where we're going to get in and talk about recruiting a little bit. They didn't have time to recruit a lot of high school guys, right? Because they got there so late. You know, the high school signing. Remember, I even did a video on this. Neil Brown and his staff did a really good job of getting most of the guys who had verbally committed to West Virginia already, and their staff actually signed, even though Coach Brown had already been fired. But he wanted his staff to work and keep working for the university that was paying them. And, you know, Ren Baker said he wanted them to do the same. And they did their job and got those guys to commit. Well, unfortunately, a lot of them didn't stay around. They either left, and even after signing, they either got out of their letter or transferred out, whatever. And some of those may have been by choice, and some were probably, you know, because Coach Rod didn't feel like they were a fit. But either way, they didn't keep. But what did they even keep half of that recruiting class? Maybe, if even that. So they didn't have a ton of high school guys coming in. Now Rich Rod has had a full season to recruit high school players. Talks about how he wants to sign 35 players coming in next year. Right now they have around 26 or 27, I think, that are verbally committed. By the way, one other positive that I took away from this interview, the show, Rich Rod says he thinks at least 17 of those guys will be early enrollees this year. That's a huge positive. You get 17 of those freshmen, and you know, and if they're going to sign 8, 9 more, there will be a percentage of those guys that are probably early enrollees as well. If you get at least half of your signing class that can come in January, go through spring camp, and now they're going to have summer practices they can do with them. Rich Rod mentioned that too. They'll have a head start, and they might actually be able to contribute in year one if they're ready to go physically. That's important. And even physically, from the physical aspect, they'll have 6 months or well, if you count up to fall camp, they'll have 8 months in the strength and conditioning program and in the nutrition program at a Power 4 institution. That's a big deal. If you're going to sign that many freshmen, you like to hope you have a couple who can contribute right away and at least be part of the rotation. You don't expect a ton of them to, but if you get a handful of guys who can contribute right away, I think that's a pretty good deal. Along with the guys you can retain and along with the guys that you bring in out of the portal. We're going to talk about that next, along with the injury news that he gave, an update there. But first, we're going to give a shout out to our channel sponsor here, the fine folks over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Your season, your shot. The NFL season is rolling, and every touchdown can bring you closer to a payout with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. From first touchdown scorer to anytime TD props or the thrill of live in-game betting, every snap is loaded with opportunity. New customers, this one is for you. Bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, score over $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code COUZ. That's code COUZ to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you place your first $5 bet. Plus, over $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Fees may apply in Illinois, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. NFL Sunday Ticket offer for new subscribers only and auto renews until canceled. Digital games and commercial use excluded. Restrictions apply. Additional NFL Sunday Ticket terms at youtube.com/go/NFL Sunday Ticket/terms. Limited time offer. All right. Thank you for being patient and letting me pay the bills. And thanks to DraftKings for supporting what we're doing here on the show. Now let's talk about his comments about the portal, which I thought were the most positive takeaway. Now, you could put a negative spin on it, too, as it relates to this season. And you can say that he's making excuses or whatever. But I took it as a positive, and let's talk about it. He said by the time they got there and by the time he was able to assemble a staff, because remember, the portal opened on December the 8th or 9th, I believe, the portal window did. He was hired on around December 12th. By, the way the portal works, a lot of guys whether we like it or not, they're already talking to, or through their agents or their family members or whatever, are already talking to teams to decide where they want to visit or where they want to go before they even enter the portal. So by the time they actually put their name in the portal, they kind of have an idea where they want to go. They at least have it narrowed down to a handful of schools or a couple of schools. It's a very quick process. They liken it to speed dating. Well, West Virginia had to miss out on a lot of those type guys because they had a new staff coming in. Rich Rod got hired 3 or 4 days later, and it took him several weeks, as it should, to assemble a staff. So by the time they were actually able to start talking to guys, and let's not forget the general manager too, it took a while to get a general manager hired. By the time you get through all that, most of your players are picked through. So you're left with, in a lot of cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, you're left with guys who really aren't guys you would normally take. Let's face it. They're still in the portal that late for a reason in a lot of cases. Now, sometimes it's because guys are being picky. In West Virginia's case, there were a couple of guys who were dealing with potential academic ineligibility issues, and I guess West Virginia decided to roll the dice and take a chance on those guys when other schools may not have. Not really worked out for them totally right now, but, Jamoy Robinson at least is playing. Hasn't really lived up to the hype, but he's playing. Speaking of hype, there's a button below if you're watching on a mobile device. It's called the hype button between the download and the thanks button. If you hit that button, it really helps me out and gets my channel pushed out, or gets my video pushed out to more people and helps me grow. But anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand. And the whole deal with Jalen Knight, and he didn't get to play at all. We had the eligibility concerns with all the 5th year or 6th year guys that had to sue the NCAA, which Robinson was part of that group. So West Virginia apparently took chances on guys that other schools wouldn't. And there were a lot of the guys who, let's face it, probably weren't picked up by other schools because other schools didn't feel they were good enough. Rich Rod even went on in this interview to say, I would rather have guys, if there's a guy who's a backup at a Power 4 school, I've got to think real long and hard as why were they a backup at that school? Do I really want their backups? Well, most of the guys they brought in were in that situation. Now, he did say it's different if you've got a guy who's playing G4 or I guess it's G6 now, playing G6 and wants to move up and prove himself. That's a different conversation. But when you have a guy who's playing for a P4 school already and he's a backup, why is he a backup? And if you look across, and again, I hate to keep dogging on the same position group, but when you look at the O-line, that's the case for some of those guys. They were backups at other schools. Now, in some of them, some of the cases of a couple of them, they were still really young. Now, if you've got a backup who's a freshman, that's a different conversation to me. But if you've got a guy who's a backup on a Power 4 team, but he's a senior, there's probably a reason he's a backup. But yet West Virginia is relying on some of those guys at least to be starters on this team. Do the math. Why are they starters? Because they needed to fill a roster. Rich Rod even used the O-line as an example. He said, I look in that O-line room and I see 10 O-linemen because we had 10 of them leave. We don't even have, he said, that's your first team and your second team gone out the door. We had to have bodies. We had to have players. And I'm paraphrasing this. So they had to go out and get people. And there weren't as many guys to choose from at that late in the game. And he also mentioned the financial piece of it. West Virginia was not in a financial position to compete for some of the better players. And he flat out said there were guys he wanted to bring in that they could not afford. Now, Tony Caridi even said, keeping guys here as well. And Rich Rod said, yeah, but then he went on to say, I don't know how many people caught this, but he said most of the guys who left were going to get bigger paydays anyway. So it sounds to me like West Virginia may not have been willing to pay, even if they had more money, may not have been willing to pay what some of these guys were getting. There's a rumor floating around that Josiah Trotter got offered about $750,000 to go to Missouri. I doubt West Virginia's paying $750,000. No offense, but for a middle linebacker. Not that he's not a good one, but I'm not sure is that really smart for West Virginia to do that? Missouri has a much larger budget than West Virginia does. And you've got Johnny Williams also went to Missouri. I heard a rumor that Johnny Williams got offered a ton of money too to go. He was a left tackle to go play at Missouri as well, and West Virginia wasn't willing to match the number that Missouri gave them. Not sure how true that is, but it makes sense. And again, they're an SEC school with a larger budget. This year, Rich Rod said they are in a much better financial position to bring in better players. And they will be able to retain guys that they want to retain as well. Not only with the rev share number, but now he thinks they'll be in a better position with NIL than they were a year ago. Now, he said they still need more because they want to, be even more competitive, and they're competing with teams like Texas Tech who have, $30, $40 million above the rev share cap. He just wants to get $10 above the rev share cap. And I don't think they're there yet. But they've got to be selective on who they give their money to. But he said this year they're going to be in a much better position. Last year, they didn't even have a staff hired yet. So how in the world can they make decisions on who they're going to give money to? And let's not forget, they've got that extra $3 to $5 million laying around that they didn't spend on this year's roster. You know why I think they didn't spend it? Because I think they knew this year was going to be a struggle. Now, some people are like, well, then why is he coming out saying he wants to win in year one and yada, yada? Because he has to try to win. That's his job. You have to go out there and compete and try to win regardless of your situation. You can't say that your team's going to be bad publicly. You can't even say it behind closed doors. You can't let your players hear that. Listen, I've never coached at this level, and I coached a different sport. I coached girls basketball. And you cannot, and when I first started, we kind of just threw a team together with a bunch of girls who hadn't played a lot and who wanted to get better, and we were a developmental team. We'd go to these travel tournaments and get beat by 40, 50 points. But over time, we got better and better and better. And, of course, we had girls leave. We would add some players. That's the way travel ball, AAU ball goes. And over time, we were able to get better. And by the end of it, we were winning tournaments. That team now, which I'm no longer coaching them, they won, I think, every tournament they played in last year except one. It's because they developed over time. They got better as a group, as a unit over time. I was never going to go tell those girls early on in the process that we stink or we're not going to win. I mean, they obviously figured out on their own when we go to these tournaments and get bashed. But you can't, as a coach, say that on any level. You don't want to ruin any confidence a player may have. That would be bad coaching. You can't do that. You might take away their incentive to even try at that point. And there's too much money at stake, and it's too important for guys to not try. And also, you want them to put their best foot forward for film, for scouts and people like that. So, yeah, you can't say that out loud. But anyway, I do think they knew that. He even said in there, I think I mentioned it earlier, he didn't expect their growing pains to be this. The growing pains are more than they thought. But he knew there was going to be, I think he knew it was going to be a tough year. Probably didn't expect it to be this tough, but he thought it was going to be tough. So they'll be able to pay the guys more. So they'll be able to get better players out of the portal. He said he wants to bring in about 15 guys out of the portal, along with 35 high school guys. That's what, 50 guys? Plus, if you keep the 80-some guys you have, that puts you up to 130. That's over the 105 limit. What's that mean? He knows he's going to lose some guys. And by the way, the 83 does not count the seniors. They have 41 seniors graduating, more than likely. So he knows, I think he's already accounting for attrition. He probably already has an idea in his head what guys are not going to be around for next year. And I'm sure there'll be some surprises that he don't see coming that will leave. But for the most part, I think he has an idea of what players will be here next year. Because you know why? Because he's been here long enough now to evaluate all of that stuff, to talk to the players one-on-one, to see and to see if they fit his system, to know if they're happy, all these things that go into these decisions. He will know that by the end of 2025. He's got a staff that will be able to better evaluate not only high school players, but portal players. Even though you can't reach out to guys right now, you can be evaluating them. You talk to coaches around the country. You talk to gyms around the country. You talk to agents. You know what players might be out there and available potentially. You look at all these schools that are firing coaches, you start eyeballing their players that might transfer and targeting which ones you may want. So by the time their name hits the portal, boom, you're ready to pick up the phone and make a call immediately. That's how the game works now. That's the world they live in. They now have staff in place to do all of that stuff that wasn't there a year ago. Now, will 2026 still be sunshine and rainbows and cotton candy? Probably not. It might still be, if they can get up to, they might go from 2 or 3 wins up to 6 wins. But then in year 3 is really when they can start making some hay and start competing and start looking like the West Virginia football teams of previous years, in my opinion. Now, I do expect them to be a lot better in year 2, or I'd be very disappointed in Coach Rodriguez. They better at least be bowl eligible, in my opinion, in year 2. In today's world with the NIL and the transfer portal, you should be able to make massive improvement from year 1 to year 2. Now, on the injury front, let's touch on that a minute. Some bad news he passed along. Fred Perry and Khalil Wilkins are both questionable for the game coming up this Saturday. So the hits just keep coming. What's that mean for the quarterback position? Well, it means that Scotty Keene, a senior walk-on, will likely be taking snaps at practice this week. So we're down to Scotty Fox, Scotty Keene, and potentially Max Brown if he's able to go. Coach Rod said he had been banged up early in year 2, so he wasn't on the injury report or the availability report last week, so I'm not sure what the deal was. But it's very possible, if worst come to worst, you may see Scotty Keene, the walk-on, in the game on Saturday. Now, I made a kind of a funny post on X last night. I said, Scotty Keene has a chance to do the funniest thing. What if he comes out and balls out, ends up being the best quarterback on the roster? That would be something. I'm not expecting that to happen. I doubt he even gets in the game unless it's a necessity. Heck, I even joked that they just start running the triple option with Cam Vaughn, Rodney Gallagher, and Sincere Bowers. But somebody pointed out to me that, hey, the offensive line's not there to do that, and that's a fair point. But anyway, I digress. Injury news just continues to happen. Rich Rod did throw out the thing, hey, he even questioned, hey, are we doing enough from the strength and conditioning standpoint? They've got so many guys getting hurt. But he doesn't feel like that's the case. He feels like it's just bad luck. So anyway, let me know in the comment section what you think about these comments. Do you feel much better about 2026 and going forward than you did before? After these comments by Rich Rod, I recommend you go check out the Rich Rodriguez Coaches Show that he does weekly at Kegler's on Monday nights. You can listen to it live on the Varsity Sports Network app. It's now available on demand over at the WVU Sports podcast. You can go listen to it on demand. I listened to it live, and then I went back and listened to it on demand again this morning just to make some notes. But anyway, I wanted to bring this to you guys, give you my thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I want to remind you about the sponsor, Appalachia Digital, the folks who design the website over at WV Sports Chat. If you want them to design you a site, they can do that. If you want them to level up the current site, they can do that. They can help you get found easier on Google. Go to AppalachiaDigital.com/Couz. Let them know Couz sent you, and thank them for supporting the channel and what we're doing over at WV Sports Chat. I want to remind you that you can call in, leave me a voicemail. You can rant. You can ask me a question. I will address the best ones on a show. The number to call if you want to do that is 304-712-9347. For those watching, it's scrolling along the bottom of your screen. And please, if you do call, leave your name and where you're calling from so I know who I'm talking to. And then last but not least, I want to remind you that you can hit that like button, hit the thumbs up button, drop a comment, hit the hype button that I mentioned earlier. All that helps my channel grow. I'm inching very, very close. I think I'm less than 50 to 10,000 right now. So please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Anybody in your life who likes West Virginia Mountaineer sports, please have them to subscribe to the channel. I think they might enjoy it. I really appreciate you tuning into the show. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf. God bless you, and Q Country Roads.